morning and welcome to our first, not necessarily ready for prime time, and I think Dick Peterson is definitely ready for prime time. It's my honor
I've teased her about that for years.
Just a little bit of background on Dick. He joined the Bethel faculty as a professor and chair of physics in 1980 after a postdoc at Los Alamos National Laboratory and a nine-year teaching stint at Western Illinois University. In addition to receiving Bethel's Faculty Excellence Award for distinguished teaching, Dick was elected Fellow of the American Physical Society, Blanton Fellow, Director of the American Institute of Physics Board of Governors, President of the American Association of Physics Teachers, and received the National American Physics Society Prize for Outstanding Researcher as an undergraduate institution.
He's also Norwegian and doesn't like a lot of fuss.
Kind of keeping him there.
Yes, they're all printed on his business card.
He has received numerous grants, including those from the Blanton Foundation, the McKnight Foundation, Research Corporation, National Science Foundation, 3M, and numerous other laboratory experiments. But most recently, he spent some time in Kenya, and we have had an ongoing relationship with Daystar University, and we've had people over the years be able to go teach there, and then have recently been able to restart our exchange program with Daystar. So Dick's going to talk to us about his experience there.
Thank you. Can you hear? Yes. You can hear. Okay. There's a lot to talk about, and many of you have traveled around the world so much more than I. Until 2 or 3 years ago, I never had a passport. My family teases me about this, but I've tried to put on a few miles in the last few years. I thought I'd start with a story about a comb, just to give me a little demonstration to talk about, physics demonstration. When I had been in at Daystar a week or so, I was walking across the campus past the student development office, and someone came running out of the office with this comb and said, "You dropped this the other day in the cafeteria." That says something. It means I was a marked person. And as my daughters, who are people of color more than I, they'd say, "It's about time, Dad, you became a minority." And that was part of being at Daystar. I was one of, on this campus there were 1,000 or 2,000, depending on the time of day, and there were probably 4 or 5 white folks there. And it was interesting to be a marked person. And usually that was fine, but it wasn't. They didn't necessarily look up to this white guy, and so it was. There, I think, a little colonial period there still that they're doing their own thing, and it was okay that I was there. But I'll tell you a little about Daystar and try to convince some of you to go there. Some of you may go there. So over here in Kenya, and just in case your geography of Kenya isn't any better than mine, here's Nairobi. Here's Mombasa down here on the Indian Ocean. Daystar University is about 35 years old. It has 3 campuses now, a very small campus in Nairobi, which is kind of used for adult education, stuff like that. The main campus I'll talk more about is at Athi River, which is like 15 or 20 miles, seems like 100 from Nairobi. And then they have a new campus this fall in Mombasa, also out on the Indian Ocean, where it's much warmer. There's more malaria there, lots of good things in Mombasa. So what I hope to do here is talk about some motivations for going to such a place. Talk a little bit about resources right up front of people who help you get ready to go, whether you're a student or faculty member or staff. Hoping you might go there. I did meet with one Bethel student who had been a physics major who is now getting a PhD in epidemiology. Some of you may remember Amy Herman. Amy is finishing her PhD in Western Kenya, circumcising tribal people to see if it really reduces AIDS and so forth. It's a very exciting type of work. Anyway, Amy's there. So even physics majors can make an honest living, and Kenya's circumcising men. So, I want to talk just a little bit about Kenya today. Kenya is a herding country, more than usual, I think, and a little about my teaching and how it was different teaching there than here. Why do you go? I have this picture that I used once in a talk I gave at Roosevelt Covenant on this, but in this case I kind of did feel God had me by the scruff of the neck and that I had no choice. It was down the chute. I signed up for this about January or February, and they were delighted. I'll talk to you a little more about how that worked, but genuinely, this is Desmond Tutu's comment when he was talking about Bonhoeffer going back to Germany after he had been at Union Sem quite happily, and just the months before Germany really closed off, and he went back to die. And anyway, this was Tutu's remark. I didn't go to die. This is my little logo that I use in talking about being grabbed by the scuff of the neck to go to Kenya. Some of the resources, some of you may know quite well Todd Rasmussen, who used to chair and be very active in our communications department. For 3 years, he's been executive director of Daystar USA, or US, and they go out of their way to help you get ready to go, and are a wonderful resource. We met with Todd actually he was here in the spring, along with the Vice Chancellor of Daystar, who happened to be visiting the area. And I got a chance to meet Todd again. It's been a while. He was with Missions Moving Mountains for 8 years after he left Bethel. What was maybe the 80s he was here, and now has been at Daystar 3 years. He has a whole staff out in Edina. You think of Edina as a real ritzy place, but their office is not, and the ritziest part of Edina. But my point is they have people who can help you. Hannah was very helpful, just helping me feel comfortable before getting on the plane and stuff. Frank is the first grad of Daystar who works in their office. Barry Jones, who I happen to know real well because he goes to our church in Roosevelt Covenant. Do you know him? Yeah. Okay. He's the CFO, signs the checks, and Daystar US's job is to support Daystar University from the US. And they have close relationships with several big churches in the city. And this is Alan, who runs their office and does all their electronic stuff, produces their newsletter and so forth. Anyway, there are resource people available. Should you decide you'd like to visit Daystar or work there for a while, they will help you. I just, particularly, Vince Peters isn't here, but he's been working and has, I think, finally pulled off a formal relationship between Bethel and Daystar, beyond that of the Christian College Consortium, but we now have our direct relationship for exchange for students who could work out spending a semester at Daystar very nicely. And Vince could tell you much more about that. In the past, this was possible too, through Christian College Consortium, and that's how Amy Herman actually did go to Daystar while she was a senior in physics. So anyway, just like this, and Vince could tell you more. Let's just talk a little about Kenya today. This is just a picture off the web. I did not take this out the plane window. Nairobi is capital, as most of you know, a large city, although not by any means not the largest city in Africa. But about 50% of Nairobi lives in however you define them as slums. It's a very, it's a city of the rich and poor, and has some of each, but awful lot more of the very, very poor. And that impacts Daystar. I had only been at Daystar maybe 2 days, and I found people siding up to me as this supposedly rich white guy who was visiting, talking about growing up in Kibera, large slum of Nairobi that has about 1 million people in it, and telling me their story and giving me money. So the slums and the rich and the poor of Kenya, you feel right away, and you have hard decisions sometimes on how to respond to that. Just to get our feelings here, here's Nairobi up in this area. There is a small Daystar campus in Nairobi, although mostly supposedly be aimed at adult education. Then there's this highway, so-called, that goes down to Athi River, and about right there is where Daystar University is, right out there in the boonies, near that road, though. 2-3 miles in from this road, which is the main route from Nairobi to Mombasa, called Mombasa Road. And it, while I was there, it was an absolute disaster. You could not get through that road. Some of you may have read that letter I sent to Rich Sherry that he sent about around, I think, it was when you land in the airport here. Looks really nice, right? The airport's right on the same side of Nairobi as Daystar. This is only, I think, 12 or 15 miles out here. And it took 2-3 hours that night to make that trip, and just an unbelievable road. Partially because it's under construction. It has been for 2 or 3 years. You just bounce through huge holes. 18-wheelers whizzing by through the fields. People leave the road because the road just stops, and so it's kind of like after a heart attack, your arteries develop other routes. Very interesting. So anyway, and actually while I was there was a problem because getting from Athi River to Nairobi did take 2 or 3 hours. And there are Daystar buses that go back and forth all the time. And it really meant that more students than they wanted were taking classes in Nairobi and not at Athi River. This is supposed to be the main undergraduate campus. And they do have about 3,000 students total. So anyway, this is the layout. This is called Nairobi National Park. I think that's not quite like we've heard about national parks on TV in the last week or so in this country. From this road, all you see is dust and debris and construction, and I didn't see any park there. I wanted to just mention the post-election violence that many of you are probably aware of a year and a half ago. In early 2008, about 1,300 people were killed, and about 300,000 were displaced, almost in refugee situations, by terrible violence after this election. Churches were burned, it impacted students, and in fact, it interrupted the ability of students to go from the U.S. to Kenya for some time, and it's just starting up again now. I mean, the ability to go back and forth easily, but you know, this is just this week. It's still in the news. You may recall a month or two, Hillary Clinton was over there and was telling them about their corruption. They needed to clean up their act, and they said, we don't need another sermon from Hillary Clinton, but they probably do. It's the Kenyan government since the colonial period for 50 years is not short of corruption. Then there's the drought. The desert in the Sudan almost seems to be slowly moving down into Kenya. Drought is not a new thing, as you know, I think, in Kenya, but it is getting worse, such that the northern part of Kenya is in very dire straits. And it's moving south and is being felt around at the river. It's being felt at Daystar University. Let's just see if this would work.
Kenya is facing a catastrophe. After more than a year without rain,
This is
rivers
World
and dams
Vision,
have dried up,
release.
cattle and wildlife are dying, and children are going hungry. Last week, the World Food Program called for emergency aid for almost 4 million people. The rural areas have been devastated by this drought, and now it's hitting the capital, Nairobi. From the affluent suburbs to the sprawling slums, city residents are struggling to cope. We spoke to reporter Michael Kaloki. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Becky.
You live in the city of Nairobi, and we usually think of droughts as affecting farmers and people who live in rural areas, but I understand you're really feeling it in the city as well.
Well, yes, we are. A number of areas in the city do not have water and or electricity for a number of days a week. Now, in regards to electricity, Kenya relies heavily on hydroelectric power. 2 of the country's main dams have been closed down, so this has led to the current situation we're experiencing, not only in Nairobi, but around the country where people's power is being rationed. So a lot of Nairobi residents complaining about this, complaining also as a result, Peggy, that food prices are shooting up. Now also, when you drive around some of the streets, you are more likely to encounter some Maasai pastoralists coming in from some of the neighboring districts, walking their cattle through the city looking for pasture.
Where would they find grass in the city?
I think that is the question, because a lot of the grass within the city has dried up. Now, some of the places that they might find grass are, for example, in some of the open fields. There are not many around the city, but there are a few left. The sidewalks as well. But we're talking about the little grass that grows on the edge of the sidewalk.
Yes, so if I were walking down a city street, I might see the Maasai with a cow on the edge of the sidewalk looking for grass?
Well, it depends where you're walking. Take, for example, the Langata area. It's a residential, well known as a residential area in Nairobi. I use that road almost every day, and I meet them almost every day. So another problem I would say that is created by this is the traffic. So you find that people are calling radio stations saying that the streets are being blocked by the cattle. Some others say, well, what are the pastoralists supposed to do, because they need to find pasture for their cattle.
Okay, so you get the picture there. This has gotten quite a bit worse since I was there, and it's not gotten better. There are slums. This is a picture of Kibera, kind of a famous picture. You see it on the web all the time. This slum of about 1 million people in Nairobi, and about 20% of the 2.2 million Kenyans who have HIV do live in Kibera. It's a huge place, 1 million people, it's a lot of folks. It's very compact and concentrated. It has several villages within it, and again, students told me about living there. This is a picture of Kibera. You also see some plastic bags here. That's called the flying toilets. Using plastic bags for toilets are a way to go, but they clog everything up. And it's just part of the problem of a slum like that. Athi River, which you saw on the map, is very near where Daystar's big campus is. It's also the center of the Kenyan Meat Commission. Recently, just this summer after I left, the Kenyan government decided they would try to ship livestock that were dying around the whole country into Athi River and slaughter them there, and they gave the ranchers about $65 each for each animal. Unfortunately, they weren't too cool about how they did this, and most of the animals died of lack of water while being trucked in. So you end up with, this is a picture off the web. This is the Athi River. The Daystar University is just 2 or 3 miles back that way, and this is what resulted. I sent a note about this picture and this event to Shari Kingsbury, who was a friend I met in a fellowship group at Daystar. And this is not good use of PowerPoint here, but this is for just, I wanted to read a little bit about this for you. Yes, pressures over water have definitely increased with the current drought. People fight over water. People steal water from the ones who have storage. As for impact on students, I've heard that some have problems with fees because they've lost their livelihoods. Some have gone home. Daystar has to truck in about 40 10,000 liter tankers to get water daily, and that's about 7,500 Kenyan shillings, so that's maybe $100 per tanker for 40 of those. So you can do the multiplication. That's costing Daystar a lot of bucks just to make do with getting water. And she talks about they'd really like to do some water collection on campus, do a much better job of that. Digging wells does not work because they become saline very quickly. There has been some, just in the last week now, some rain in western Kenya, but not in the parts of the country that need it badly. And she points out that that article of the cattle is very real. It's the same thing they saw there. It's not exaggerated on the whip. So here's Daystar. This is but that is the environment that exists in. It kind of looks like an oasis here in a country of great pain, and it is. And they're proud of being a university with a difference, that they try to, their goal very openly is to train servant leaders, leaders that will not be corrupt for Kenya. Of course, it's not a perfect university either, so it has a little bit of everything there too. But this is the entrance. When you come in as a visiting faculty member, as Leo Gabriel, some of you know, was there recently, they put you up in a fairly nice little apartment building. It's called the White House, named after the color of the skin of people who tend to stay there. But it's nice. There's a little kitchenette, little living room, and a mosquito net there over my bed. And I just took those snapshots. But it's one of the, Daystar US built that building quite some time ago, 10, 15 years ago. And it makes it, it's kind of a nice place to feel relatively at home. It is, however, about a half mile or so from the main campus. The main campus is over here, and this is the rocky road that leads to the campus from the White House and from a dorm that's over there. It happens to be Bethel dorm on this side. So you go across this ravine. There's a lot of rocks and stuff here. There's a little stream down here at the bottom. While I was there, they actually finished this sidewalk and bridge with much hands-on construction, very few machines, and so forth. I did take a fall. The second night I was there, I was enjoying myself and enjoying looking at the Southern Cross, which in the Southern Hemisphere, you know, physics professors are supposed to look at such things. So there's the Southern Cross. You see in the Southern Hemisphere, this is Alpha and Beta Centauri, off here on the left. And literally, I was staring at that and stumbled into a hole, and I still have some scars to show for it. Fortunately, I had been sent away with quite a first aid kit from my daughter who had been in the Peace Corps. So I was very well taken care of, and she was so happy I got to use. I taught a physical science class, elementary physics class on energy. They have trouble getting textbooks. Yes, they do. They had a book by Robert Hendricks on energy and with environmental impacts. My wife Donna, some of you know, is more of an environmentalist than I. She was so delighted I was being forced to teach a class on energy and the environment. But I did teach more physics, I would admit, than the book had in it. My class was 5 weeks, and 2.25 hours per day rounded off about 2 hours. People were ready to leave. This is right during lunch, so it was like 11 to 1:30 or something like that. A little bit about the British system at Kenya. They do teach a final exam emphasis course. You're required to do that. So typically 70% of your grade comes from your final exam. Here's some rules about dress and stuff at Daystar. I didn't know about these until I got there. John Nassau, who arranged, didn't tell me any of this. Male teachers are expected to wear a business shirt, slacks, tie, and dress shoes while lecturing. Female teachers are expected to wear business clothes. So, you know, no gym shoes. Just looking around here, what would be nasty? I didn't know this, so I had one sport coat and one tie, which got a lot of use. After the class starts, of course, you can let go a little bit, but they really, African culture, dress is very important. They want you to look like a professional. It's nice if you know something too, but by golly, you're going to dress. This is the grading scale. This higher end might look like something many of us would espouse, but notice it's pretty hard to fail. 40–45% and you're passing grade. And at least John Masso, who I'll talk about, kind of brought me there, saying in Africa it's also true when you graduate, no one pays too much attention to your grades. It's the certificate, it's the diploma that you put in front of people. And so people down in this range could probably still do okay if they graduate. You have to have your final exam approved by your department. It's a little different than around here. They moderate it. They decide if it tests what you said you're going to test and your syllabus, all that sort of thing. You have to show how you're going to grade it. And they really take that seriously. About 2 weeks after you give your final exam, which is a big deal, they're very careful about final, you turn your grades into the head of the department in 2 weeks, so it's not too difficult. But they are highly confidential, and your grade, the instructor does not give the grade. The department gives the grade, so then the department will moderate your grades if you've not graded properly. Too high or too low, they have every right in the world to change it, and they often do. All this probably even more means not many people fail. All right? So, at least at Daystar. And that can be a problem. My first day of class, I had 2 out of the 43 students showed up. I was a little disconcerting. I was ready to teach them all the physics in the world, and 2 people came in this school. And actually, I talked to Chet Wood. Some of you know Chet, who's in Nairobi. He said even in their seminary, it's still true that for the tradition there is that many students don't show up the first week. They're doing other important things. They're getting settled and registered and so forth. So they don't have to show up. Second class, I had about 50% there, and then by that time people started coming, although a Kenyan holiday came in there as well. So about the time I was giving my first quiz, it was the first day some people had come, actually quite a few. About a third of the class came the first day I was giving my first Cat 1 quiz. So after that they came very well, and so forth. I had to take attendance, which I haven't done in 38 years of teaching. I don't find it, have to do it there, because you can only miss 25% or you can't get credit. This is the science building. My classes were right in this room here. It's really a lab. but they don't have many labs. So anyway, this was their first science building. You can see it's fairly new. These were the two students who came the first day of class. I've never forgotten Alpha and Mary for their names. Just some more. The students were wonderful. So I got to know them. But this white guy from the U.S. is kind of scary to them, and it was a little tough to get them to know them as well as I would have liked, but I tried. This is the layout of the lab. So there's 5 or 6 at each table. In a way, if you're into group teaching, which some of you are more than I, it would work quite well. But these people are not used to group learning at all. They're used to memorizing what you write on the blackboard or whiteboard. And, but I tried to do that. I made a big deal of energy, and particularly, they all had mobile phones, so I talked about it as a fun example of all the forms of energy that I think as you talk into your phone, from your vocal cords, through the phone, through the radio waves, through the reception, through the electricity and all that. It worked fairly well, and it was a big question on the final, was really explain energy flow on a mobile phone. So that seemed to work. And it was a down-to-earth example. This is Jennifer, secretary in the science area, who saved my life many, many times. They have chapel. This is an outdoor amphitheater. This is Phyllis Masso and John. John is the assistant dean, he is dean of science and technology. He's a physicist, and I knew him before, and he's the guy that kind of got me there. And Phyllis is his wife, who does all kinds of unbelievable things. She runs orphanages, she helps run the Anglican church nearby, and they run the Ahadi family home for 35 boys from Nairobi slums. This year, 3 or 4 of those graduated from Daystar, which is an unbelievable thing to pull off. And they they get some of their money through Daystar US, and they also, some churches support them with their work. Very impressive couple. This is Phyllis. She's also a professional librarian. She's chair of the Christian Association of Librarians in Africa, Kenya, and has worked in the library some at Daystar. There she is with her Sunday garb outside the Anglican Parish Church. This is Joyce, who also helped me do laundry and things. You're encouraged, like I can remember as a little kid being bothered by missionaries who paid people to be maids and so forth. You've got to do it in this case. It's how you support them. I mean, gradually that became real to me in this trip. They have no wash machines in the White House, so doing your laundry is a big job. And Joyce helped me do that. I paid it back. These are just some pictures from Daystar graduation, which I don't think. Over 10 or 12,000 people came to commencement. It's like being on Snelling Avenue at the State Fair. You have people selling things. Everyone, you know, all their stuff. You can't just give them a card. You got to give them something. And they fill this whole hillside with people. Every chair on campus is out here. So this is the Chapel Amphitheater, and the commencement occurs up there, but then this whole hillside gets filled with people. Churches and villages all come if they've supported a person. Very celebrative time. Parts of it you feel at home. This is just a shot of this young lady that's just graduated. And here's a celebration I've never heard at Bethel. It's all the ladies from the village or church that are giving her a high time. Anyone know Swahili enough to know what they're saying? It's a blessing. So it's very a little rap here too. We'll close with this in this moment. This is a graduation party at the Mossel's house. I don't know what they're saying. I hate to think, but and visited one of the churches we visited was the little Anglican church, which is right outside the gate, so you can easily walk there from the. They're fairly Anglican, and also went to the little Covenant church, much less high church than the little Anglican. They not only have sheet metal, they have lots of holes in their sheet metal, and I worked. This is a church supported by Roosevelt Covenant that I worked with a little bit, so it was fun to visit there. They have chickens too. So Covenant World Relief has allowed them to buy chickens. They sell eggs in the market and make a little money. This is Ann, who's the pastor's wife, looking out the window during the service. These are two guys our church has supported. This is Duncan giving a class, and I preached one Sunday, which means they're pretty desperate. For a stoic Swede, it's a little lively service. No instruments except the drum. They'd love to have a keyboard, but they can't afford it and an amplifier. And before the sermon, they even rev it up a little more, spin around a little bit. And I must admit, being in those little churches was wonderful. Promise to quit. We have time for just a few comments, questions. Bob follows me while I wander. Yes.
You mentioned part of the mission of Daystar is to train leaders who will not be corrupt.
Yes.
Given the corruption that is endemic in the system, and given the time they've had now to turn out leaders, how successful would you say they have been in that mission?
Well, you hear their story. It sounds like they've done well. They've, like at commencement, brought in certain alumni who spoke openly, which just takes some guts.
Right.
They're ministers in the state and so forth, political ministers, and speak openly of their efforts to run a clean ship. They try, but it's pretty deep, some of this. And Daystar itself has had some corruption, I understand, within its own body at times. It's not a perfect thing. Bethel's not totally perfect.
How has the experience of your teaching there affected your teaching here?
Well, I was telling Brian, my department, by the way, has a seminar right now, so they couldn't come to this, but I was talking to Brian about how I would like to teach more in a general physics class with a system. This mobile phone thing really got to me. Inclined plane and blocks sliding down lose interest in Kenya and the U.S. And I'm inspired to try to teach more with systems in a more of a non-linear way, maybe less holding hands and so forth. I mean, and a situation where you don't have, I mean, for Dick Peterson to teach anything without demonstrations was a difficulty. But I learned to wave my hands and use what I had, and they had cell phones, so we talked about it. So it will impact when I'm done with my sabbatical and I'll teach.
I find there's a different motivation in the students there versus here. Excited about learning.
Oh, I think they're more driven. I was kidding about them, not all kidding. It was quite troubling when they don't come the first day or so, but that's part of their tradition of the school and the culture. But when they start coming, they are very intent. There's nobody sleeping in class, I'll tell you that. They're taking notes, and they do ask. I was able to get them to ask questions and so forth. Anyway, they seemed very intent. They wanted to pass, and they didn't want to get C's. They got A's and B's. I don't know how my grades were moderated after I left, but actually they were rather similar to grades I might get here. The average grade maybe being a B minus or a B. So, but they were really good. They had villages and churches behind them who have gone around the room raising money. How much will you give? I know, I saw it happen. And that's a great motivation. Yes.
You said they're making a physics major?
They are making a physics major. I'm a little scared about quality there, but you know, that's American snobbishness to some extent. Their physics major doesn't need to be ours. It's been approved. John Massel is trying to put it together. They also want an engineering major, fast. And they have to get it certified in Kenya. And they're just told they got to hire a couple of engineers. And they can't hire them because they can't pay enough. I've heard that.
Who were your students then?
This was a general ed class, so many of them were business majors, and commerce and communication are big things. They are starting a new nursing program, maybe compete with going to Christian University and so forth. So they're trying to push new professional programs, but to someone from the U.S., it seems like they're spread pretty thin. That's a little scary, but I guess maybe when Carl Lundquist was moving us here, we were spread pretty thin too. Thank you very much.